Good morning. For my husband, precision of language matters a lot. It's a lesson that I've had to learn and relearn throughout my marriage. For most people, asking, do you want to go to X, Y, or Z event with me? And will you go to X, Y, or Z event with me? Are the same interchangeable question, but not for my husband. Does he want to go? No. Will he go? Possibly. I have had to learn that I need to be precise when I communicate with him. Otherwise, what I mean to say may not be the same as what actually gets said. For example, in the past, when I would talk to other people about our kids, I would use my daughter and our daughter interchangeably. To me, and perhaps to many of you, those were interchangeable descriptions. My intention was simply to identify a parenting relationship so I could move on to the rest of the story. But the impact that my wording had on my husband did not match my intention. When I would say my daughter instead of our daughter, he would be hurt and offended. To him, the difference in that word choice indicated whether or not I saw him as an equal partner in our parenting relationship. And that really mattered to him deeply. While I had no malintent in my word choice, I needed to acknowledge the impact that it had on him. Even though I didn't mean anything negative by it, I needed to learn to be more mindful about how I speak in order to avoid hurting him in the future. For most kinds of mistakes that we make, forgetting to get the milk or not waiting our turn at the stop sign, no one thinks we are a bad person. We make amends for the mistake, apologize, but people don't tend to see our error as a character flaw or a moral failing. Over time, however, I have come to see that the mistakes that we are the most defensive about, and the ones that can be the hardest to learn from, are when we say something that hurts or offends another person. The go-to reaction is often defensive. That's not what I meant. Or, are you trying to say that I am? You can fill in the blank here with a character flaw of your choice. Lazy, selfish, an idiot, uncompassionate, domineering, chauvinistic, racist. Being called out for a hurtful comment seems to make our emotions run high and our defenses immediately go up into red alert, shields up mode. For me, when my husband would point out how my word choice would make him feel, I used to be incredibly defensive. How can you think I'm such a horrible person that I don't see you as an equal decision maker for our kids? If you're attacking my character as a person, I'm going to defend myself, my intention. It took a long time for me to understand that having made a negative impact on someone didn't make me a bad partner, it made me human. What made me a bad partner was being so defensive about the intention behind my comment that I couldn't hear or understand the impact of the comment. Once I was finally able to do that, I was able to understand how beneficial it is when someone is actually willing to take the risk to explain the impact a comment has had on them. In Spanish, we have a saying, si te pica, te aplica, which loosely means that if it rankles you, it applies to you. So now, when I get a piece of feedback that is uncomfortable, I try really hard not to be defensive and to see what truth there might be in that for me to learn from. A few years ago, I received a piece of feedback from one of my supervisors at district office that I should endeavor to speak last amongst my colleagues. Following Marcia's story, I feel inclined here to mention that this was not Larry Didway, the former superintendent. Now, this piece of feedback, que me pica mucho. I'm not gonna lie, this really pissed me off. I know that the person who said it, I know that their intention was to help me grow professionally and to improve the dynamics of our team. I'm a big enough person to admit that I am a really fast processor and I don't always allow for others who need more processing time to have enough space to enter a discussion. So I really tried hard to embrace this feedback and find the truth in it and try to do what was being asked of me. This was a supervisor. But there were two members of our team who never, and I really do truly mean never, spoke up during district level discussions, no matter how long people waited. So the unintended impact of this piece of feedback was that for several meetings, I didn't speak at all, waiting for other people to speak first. Now on the surface, maybe the impact of this comment might not seem like that big of a deal. However, the person who said it to me was a white man, and at the time, I was the only woman of color on the team. So the impact of this feedback was that it effectively silenced the only person of color in the room. And this left me questioning my professional worth and whether I was valued in our organization. I felt that my voice didn't matter and it was unwelcome. And then if that was the case, then how could I effectively advocate for the school that I was serving? I started job hunting. Now, most of you know I haven't changed jobs recently, and a few people who I trusted encouraged me to discuss with this person the impact that their comment had on me. So after a few months, this person and I had several very difficult, but ultimately productive conversations. The first attempt was a near total disaster, and their initial response was pretty defensive, more along the lines of, "Are you calling me a racist?" Which, for the record, no, I was not. But to this person's credit, they remained open to additional dialogue and were able to understand and to make amends for the unintended but profound impact of how they phrased their feedback. And for my part, I was able to let go of the impact and focus on the intention of the feedback. While I don't endeavor to speak last, I do try to count to 5 before jumping into the discussion to allow others more processing time. As humans, we make comments all the time where the impact doesn't match our intention. When someone points it out to us, these moments where we've said the wrong thing can be some of the most difficult and painful on both sides. Maybe it's because they often occur with the important people in our lives, but the tendency to defend our character in these moments is so automatic it almost feels innate. And that defense mechanism is what keeps us focused on our intention, rather than open to learning about our impact. When someone has the courage to speak to us about our impact, this is a gift because it presents us with the opportunity to learn, to make amends, and to do better, if we have the grace to accept it. A wise friend told me that in these moments, she tries to be curious, not furious. Curious about her impact, instead of furiously defending her intention. I loved this so much that I have curious, not furious written on a sticky note on my computer monitor. I think it's a mantra that could serve us all well in putting our impact over our intention.
When my daughters were young and someone would step on someone's toe or accidentally shove someone in a moment of overexcitement to get to something, I did the parental thing. Oops, you hurt your sister. You should say sorry. But I often got, but I didn't mean to hurt her. Why should I say sorry for something I didn't mean to do? Because you stepped on your sister's toe. It still hurt. Intent versus impact is kind of a hot topic lately. 15 years ago, when I was in seminary learning about anti-racism, we had a class covenant that we'd look at together before each of our classes began. It had a list of things we'd agree to, like speak from your own personal experience, share the learnings but not other people's stories without their permission, and assume good intentions. We learned how to interrupt racism and other oppressions in class, and we were encouraged to do so. I remember in one small class, probably a dozen people, where a white man casually said, "We're all white here," and we weren't. There was a biracial woman in the class who identified as Black, and we stopped and processed a little bit. And the nice thing about this situation were that we were all seminary students. That doesn't mean we were always right about anti-racism or anti-oppression stuff. Lots of us, including me, had a lot of learning to do. But it did mean that we were all going in with good intentions. We knew no one was trying to be racist or sexist or mean. And that didn't mean we always got it right. People said some dumb stuff in classes that hurt people's feelings. And I know sometimes folks felt picked on when people said ouch and explained why what they said was hurtful. We all have a little bit of that childhood, well, why should I say sorry when I didn't mean to step on her toe in us? But we all learned something important. Even with good intentions, we can still make people feel bad. It is sometimes a tricky balance. It's important that folks are aware of things they say or do that can be hurtful. We do need to focus on impact. Just because you didn't mean to fall asleep at the wheel doesn't mean that you didn't seriously injure the person in the car in front of you that you ran into. And yet, like in April's story, sometimes we need to look at the impact a step further down the road and figure out exactly what is happening. Part of this honoring and accepting that the results of your actions are more important than your intent, and that just because your intention wasn't bad doesn't mean your actions don't have harmful consequences. In an article in Everyday Feminism called Intent versus Impact, Why Your Intentions Don't Really Matter, Jamie Utt writes, "From Paula Deen to Alec Baldwin to your annoying, bigoted uncle or friend, we hear it over and over again. I never meant any harm. It was never my intent. I am not a racist. I am not a homophobe. I am not a sexist. I cannot tell you," he writes, "how often I've seen people attempt to deflect criticism about their oppressive language or actions by making the conversation about their intent. At what point does the intent conversation stop mattering so we can step back and look at impact? In the end, what does the intent of our actions really matter if our actions have the impact of furthering the marginalization or oppression of those around us? In some ways, this is a simple lesson of relationships. If I say something that hurts my partner, it doesn't matter whether I intended the statement to mean something else, because my partner is hurting. I need to listen to how my language hurt my partner. I need to apologize. And then I need to reflect and empathize to the best of my ability so I don't do it again. But when we're dealing with the ways in which our identities intersect with those around us, and in turn, the ways our privileges and our experiences of marginalization and oppression intersect, this lesson becomes something much larger and more profound. It becomes a lesson of justice. It is so very human to want to go back to our intentions, to get defensive and remind everyone that we're really a good person. But it's really important to realize that no matter what your intention was, you stepped on someone's toe. Or more importantly, you stepped on someone's feelings. In our book discussion groups about waking up white, we looked at how our own histories and cultures affect our attitudes and how other people can look at things a completely different way. That doesn't make our way wrong, it just means that it might not be right for everyone else. There was a powerful story in the book about a well-meaning group of white women who were trying to do something to help Black school children. And they decided to fund trips to cultural events in the city, a ballet, an art festival. They bussed classrooms full of kids in to see these events, hoping to inspire awe and wonder. And instead, they found out later that the kids weren't excited at all. Instead, they felt like everyone was staring at them. Clearly, to them, these were white spaces, and instead of feeling inspired, they felt afraid and uncomfortable. People get into trouble when they approach racial justice work with an attitude of wanting to help people. It's a really common desire to make things better for folks that we see as being more oppressed than we are. It's a good intention. But when we see ourselves as the helpers and others as the helped, we deny their agency. We're not asking what they want. Rather, we're assuming that our way is better and that they would be better off following our ways. That's not how things work. There's a great paragraph in the Poisonwood Bible, again, set in the Congo in 1959, which was the time that there were elections to form the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The country is about to hold an election, but the village chief, Tata Ndu, explains this. Our way was to share a fire until it burned down, aye? To speak to each other until every person was satisfied. Younger men listened to older men. Now the Belize tell us the voice of a young, careless man counts the same as the vote of an elder. White men tell us, vote, Bantu. They tell us you do not have to all agree. If two men vote yes and one says no, the matter is finished. A boo, even a child, can see how it will end. It takes 3 stones in the fire to hold up the pot. Take one away and leave the other 2, and the pot will spill into the fire. We might think of democracy as being an ideal system, but it's not in a tiny village where everyone needs to agree on something. It's not the highest value in a collectivist culture. There's a phrase being used among historically marginalized groups in Unitarian Universalism. Nothing about us without us. We need to ask the people affected what they would like, what would work for them. Honoring the impact of our actions. Seeing how someone is actually affected rather than what we meant, and apologizing if we hurt someone is more than just polite. It's an issue of justice. May we endeavor to go deeper than our own feelings and see what is really needed in the moment. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.